Hey, Professor here. This is a comprehensive guide to the Holy Paladin, and so after watching this video, hopefully you will have a better understanding of your Holy Paladin. And so we will start with talents, and then we'll move into artifact, and then we'll go to gear, and then we'll go to add-ons, and then we will go to playstyle. I figured that would be a pretty comprehensive way to do it. And so let's start with the talents. And so you will hear me say a lot that based on your talents, your artifact, your gear, whatever it is, your legendaries, you're going to want to make sure that you are familiar with them and that you are maximizing them. And so I always say that if you don't maximize a particular thing, then there's really no point in using it. And so when we're looking at these talents, keep that in mind. When we're looking at the gear, keep that in mind. And so this first row here, if you can't maximize your Crusader Strike, for example, so we use a Holy Shock here, and then you see my Holy Shock goes on to cooldown. Now watch it. If I hit, it reduces that cooldown. And so if you're not in melee range, which you kind of should be, because remember your mastery here allows you to heal more based on your proximity. So you should be kind of close to who you're healing anyway. And so you should be able to kind of like tab target and do a couple Crusader Strikes on a target. And also during explosive Mythic Plus weeks, that would be a good time to run this, because you can kind of tab target and kill the explosives pretty easily. So if you can make full use of this talent, it is great. Holy Shock is really one of your main heals, and by using Holy Shock you get Infusion of Light, which allows you to either cast a fast Holy Light or a increased powered flash of light. Okay, so you're always going to want to have this infusion up as soon as you can, as often as you can. So running Crusader's Might is a good idea. However, a lot of times you can't do this. So you're going to maybe run Light's Hammer so Light's Hammer is an ability where, I'll show it to you real quick. So Light's Hammer, you put it on the ground like this, and so you throw it on the ground. It has a minute cooldown, and it heals all of your allies that are standing in there. You can kind of read that right there, and it also deals damage to enemies. So that's a neat little thing for AoE damage and AoE healing for certain boss fights. That's great when you're all stacked up. A lot of times I don't use this. A good mana efficient thing, so look at the mana cost, right? So Bestow Faith is really good for mana efficiency. You just got to kind of predict when you're going to be taking damage. And so this is a great ability that I choose. I'll put it on myself, for example, and then I'll use Light of the Martyr, and then I'll get myself purposefully low by healing with Light of the Martyr, and then I know that that heal is coming in. Or you throw it on the tanks, and you know that they're probably going to be taking damage over the next 5 seconds, so it's a great mana efficient heal. I've been in scenarios where I'm hovering at like 1% mana, and really the only thing I have mana for is Bestow Faith and Holy Light, and this has definitely saved my life. So having that low cost heal is great. Cavalier, second row here, really good for mobility. You're going to run this if you high mobility fights, or maybe like you want to speed run a Mythic Plus and you're constantly falling behind, you want to run Cavalier. Most of the time I find myself running Rule of Law. Sometimes Unbreakable Spirit could be good. It reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands. And so Divine Protection's usually 1 minute. Divine Shield's usually 5 minutes. Lay on Hands is usually like 7-ish minutes. It gets reduced with one of the Legendaries, and it gets reduced with your artifact. But the bottom line is, if you want to use those abilities more, sometimes I used to run this, but I don't really run Unbreakable Spirit anymore. I tend to go with Rule of Law. And so also with Rule of Law, I don't like having it on a different keybind. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but when I do run Rule of Law, which is what I'm running right now, I actually have it keybound to Tyr's Deliverance. And so what I did is I macroed it, and the reason why I macroed it to Tyr's Deliverance is if you notice, if I start casting Tyr's Deliverance, you'll notice how it does not use Rule of Law, right? It does not. It tries to, but it does not. It just starts the cast. However, if I'm moving, it will cast it. So watch that. I'm going to move, and I'm going to hit it. Now I have my Rule of Law. And so this is a really neat macro, because what you can do is, check this out. So if I want to use my artifact ability, and then right at the end of it, I hit it again, and then right as my artifact ability goes off, I can hit Rule of Law. I can also use my Rule of Law. I can monitor my Rule of Law stacks down here, and I can use it even if my Tears Deliverance is on cooldown. So you'll see my Tears on cooldown. You can also see it over here. And so we will have one available now, and so all I have to do, even if I'm not running now, it'll do it. But it's kind of nice. So the macro is right here, and so all you would do is find the icon for it and hashtag tool show tooltip /cast Tears Deliverance and then /cast Rule of Law. Pretty simple. I would just make sure Rule of Law is second. But that's one of the things I do to make my life easier, and that will increase your range. So that's really awesome, right? So that is why I usually use this ability. So look at how far I am away right now. I cannot heal the commander right now. It says out of range. I pop my artifact ability, and now I can. Look at how far away that is. That is awesome. And so my ability now has a 60-yard range. My flashlight, 60-yard range. That is crazy, right? So you really want to make sure that you are able to pop this when you need it, so that it increases your effectiveness of your mastery, but also that range. Anytime you ever get knocked out of range, or during a boss fight, or you're running back after you just rezzed and your teammate's about to die, but he's 60 yards away, you can pop that real quick. Notice how I also have sounds you'll hear throughout, and we'll talk about that a little later. So keep going here. Repentance I use a lot, okay, because Repentance is a great CC for Mythic Plus. However, I do cast Judgment a lot, pretty much on cooldown, and so Fist of Justice becomes amazing when you actually can make use of it, right? So you're going to see that, you're going to hear that reoccurring theme. If you can't make use of it, then don't do it. If you're not going to ever use Repentance, then why do you have it, right? If you're not going to ever use Hammer of Justice, or let's say you're only fighting bosses that are immune to stun, why do you have Fist of Justice? You don't necessarily need it, and so you just kind of have to make the judgment call for yourself. Here is your level 60 row, and so I usually run Devotion Aura for Mythic Plus, but raiding I usually run Aura of Sacrifice. Aura of Mercy also has its place, but real nice thing about Devotion Aura is that it can reduce the damage that sometimes a lethal hit can become non-lethal for your party, especially on those high Mythic Pluses. So for example, on the last boss of Black Rookhold, when he does his first Shadow Bolt volley, you can pop Devotion Aura. Everybody takes 20% reduced damage. That's a nice one. Also, if you kind of stay near your tank, and let's say you have all range DPS, you and your tank are taking 10% reduced damage. So it's a great one for Mythic Pluses. But when you start to have a raid, it's not as useful. I like Aura of Sacrifice because any allies within 10 yards of you, that damage is redirected to you, even while you're not active. And then when you activate it, it becomes a amazing raid top off. And so you just activate this, and you can heal people that are low, and it will spread like wildfire. So 15% of your effective healing is replicated to all allies. So after the entire huge raid, let's say you have 20 people in your raid, everybody drops to like below half health, you can top off the whole raid by yourself. Sometimes in my voice chat, I just say, okay, topping off the raid, and that lets the other healers know that they don't have to do anything, because I can top off 20 people in a few seconds. Aura Mastery is just kind of more of a passive thing. You pop it, and it just heals for you. It's a little easier to use than Aura of Sacrifice. Then here, I never really use Holy Prism, and so it's really just Divine Purpose and Holy Avenger. And so Divine Purpose is really nice, because if you have that, you can use your Holy Shock. See this proc right here, and so sometimes when you cast Light of Dawn and when you cast Holy Shock, it makes your next one free. And so you see how it just procced again? Because that was awesome. So that was just a double proc on my Light of Dawn, but the second one actually procced the Divine Purpose, and so now I can cast it again for free. And look at that, it just procced again. I can cast it again for free. So it's pretty cool, because it makes things really mana efficient. You save mana, and you also can get more casts off. And so this would be really good if you have Sea Star, for example. Now see, look, I can cast another Holy Shock, and now I can cast another Holy Shock. The nice thing about this is Sometimes it procs a lot, but the bad thing about it is sometimes it doesn't proc a lot. And so you really want to make sure that you are making full use of this so that when it does proc, you're using it. One complaint I have is when you use it and it procs, remember you get your infusion pretty much every time, and so you want to make sure you're using that. And so if you use a Holy Shock and then you have another one that procs, well, you kind of got to wait anyway because you want to use your infusion before you use your free one. And so it does help, but I mean, it's pretty nice. And so you can get the ring as well, the legendary ring that reduces that, and that'll make it a little easier. Because then you can also have Holy Avenger. So Holy Avenger is more controlled. I usually use Holy Avenger. You can pop it when you want, and so when you're trying to spread out your cooldowns over the duration of a fight, Holy Avenger becomes amazing. So you pop this, and then you see how it's monitored here. It's a minute and whatever cooldown. It increases your haste by 30%. Holy Shock healing, so Holy Shocks are healing more. My cast times are faster, so my cast time on Flashlight goes down to 1 second, right? Look at that. So 1 second cast on Flash of Light compared to ordinarily it is a 1.3 second cast. So pretty nice to have that haste on demand and also have that increased Holy Shock healing. If you can actually have both of these if you have that legendary ring, which could definitely have some uses. And then Sanctified Wrath I usually run for Mythic Plus. Judgment of Light I usually run for raids. Reason being is it has 40 attacks, right? And those 40 attacks are going to become a lot more useful when you have more people hitting who you're targeting. And so Judgment of Light becomes a lot less useful when you are in a party. Legendary wise, you can use the Crown Jewel to buff this, and so if you have the Crown Jewel, you really want to make sure you're running Judgment of Light. I also have the Vitality Resonator. I got this at 965 from Antorus, and this one I have it macroed to my Judgment, and there's a really nice Judgment macro that you can use. So if you're Judgmenting on cooldown, watch what this does. So I Judgment, puts that 40 stacks on. You heard the bam bam for my Mark of the Claw and my Concordance, but watch when it's off cooldown, you hear another noise. That little ching. Okay, the siren was my other cooldown coming back up, but you'll hear the little cha-ching, and that tells me I can do it again. Now, all attackers are being healed right now, so you want to make sure that's up. You can also put focus on them, monitor those stacks down here without even targeting. And so listen, that little cha-ching means I can do it again. And you just want to do that all the time because when you're casting Judgment, it's also giving you the Crown Jewel increased healing by 15%. And it also is going to give me my Vitality Resonator on cooldown. Now you can use this separately, but I like to just make sure it's being used on that minute cooldown. And so I have it macroed. So my macro for that is this Judgment macro. So hashtag, show tooltip, and then /cast harm target equals target Judgment, and then /use harm target equals target my trinket. And so what this does is I can actually target somebody, and then when usually you're targeting somebody unless you have like hover over macros, but when you're healing, you're targeting on somebody, right? And so you will target the person that you're healing, and then whoever your target is, all you have to do is hit Judgment. As long as you're facing the right direction, that will automatically use that Vitality Resonator and automatically cast your Judgment on your target's target. And if you're not targeted on an ally, it will continue to work as normal. And so Judgment of Light comboed with the Crown Jewel, I think, is very, very, very strong. So that's usually what I run with raiding. Sanctified Wrath for Mythic Plus. This is going to buff your Avenging Wrath like crazy. Okay, so now we're down to the last, finally, but not least. We're down to the last tier here. So we have Beacon of Faith, Beacon of Lightbringer, Beacon of Virtue. Beacon of Faith is really, really useful for raiding, especially when both tanks are taking damage. When you know that there's consistent damage being taken by two people, right? So I just got that. I can put a beacon on this person, and I can put a beacon on this person. And so watch as I heal myself. Even both those people are being healed. Wait a second. So let me change it. Sorry. Here we go. There's that. Okay. So I have a beacon on both people, right? And so I'm healing myself, right? I'm targeted on myself, but you'll see that this person over here is getting healed, and this person over here is also being healed. So pretend like that's your tanks, right? So you can really, really just focus on the raid and not even really have to worry about your tanks when when you're using the double beacon. And so this, I would maybe say it's kind of the lazy way to do it, but it's really strong, right? Especially when both tanks are taking damage. Now, if one tank is taking damage at a time, maybe you want to go with Beacon of the Lightbringer, and then you can be switching your beacons every time they taunt. It just becomes a little bit tricky, but you can do it, and I have done it before, and it works really well, because this allows you to sit farther away from the melee. It allows you to be more with the ranged, because that mastery fall off is not going to be really in existence anymore, because what this does is it allows your beacon target to actually act as you in terms of proximity. So it's going to allow all of your heals to heal all of the melee which are standing near the tank a lot, even if you're in the ranged. So I really like that, and it also increases the range and healing of your Light of Dawn, and so this allows you to get that buff. So when I do this, notice how it puts the buff on them, increased healing by 10%, and so if that range is increased, it allows you to get that buff on them even from like back here, okay? And so it just allows you to have more people buffed. It heals better. When it double procs, it really heals a lot. So that's a really nice one, Beacon of the Lightbringer. I usually use this for Mythic Plus. Only time I really ever use Beacon of Virtue is in a Mythic Plus situation, but especially on bursting weeks. So when you know that there's a ton of predictable party damage coming your way, you never want to really use this in raids, but if there's a bunch of predictable party damage happening, so bursting would be a great example. You just killed, 10 people, right? And you have 10 stacks of bursting. I've literally gone over 4 million HPS trying to heal through that, and I've done it successfully. The only reason is because I have this Beacon of Virtue. Pretty much what this does is it puts beacons on everybody in the vicinity. So look at how it's on that person, and then I heal, and it just heals like crazy. It even put a beacon on this person. So literally just not everybody, but total of 4, right? So it puts a beacon on your target and the nearest 3 allies, and it does have a cooldown. And now I do have a macro for that too, and so what I did is I pretty much just macroed my beacons together, and so you'll see how I do /cast Beacon of Light, /cast Beacon of Virtue, and then I also actually keybound it to my Deceiver's Grand Design, because I didn't really feel like using that trinket separately, and so whenever I'm using Deceivers, which is off of Kill Jaden, I have that keybound to my beacon. So I think we're done talking about talents. Let's move into artifact. And so artifact is something that you should definitely be mindful of. I'm just going to kind of assume that everybody has all their artifacts. And so you can easily get caught up if you don't, right? And Concordance with Legion Fall is something that you should have at least 1 point in. I'm just kind of assuming that we're starting there. So you have everything unlocked, right? And I just wanted to kind of point out some things that you might not be aware of. So one thing is that right here, when the health of your Beacon of Light target falls below 50%, your next Holy Light or Flash of Light will heal an additional 100%. It can only occur once every 30 seconds. That means if you see a tank dropping low, every 30 seconds you can have a really strong heal on them with your Flash of Light or Holy Light. So keep that in mind. And so this is just the difference between a great Holy Paladin and a good Holy Paladin. A great Holy Paladin is going to make use of all of this information. And so I don't know if you knew this, but your Aura Mastery also increases all healing by 50% or 15%, right? And so this really is nice to be aware of. There was a time where I popped Aura Mastery, and yeah, it was good, but I don't know, I just didn't realize that it also increased my healing. So it's nice to know that. And then the other thing is here. This was the one that I really did not know anything about. I actually made a weak aura for it, And so the weak aura will allow you to monitor this a little bit more, but it's a little tricky. I'll show you how it works. It increases the healing of your next Holy Shock by 10% of all the damage and healing that you do within the next 10 seconds. And so let me show you how powerful this is. So real quick, I'm going to Holy Shock myself. You'll see that it crits right now for about 1.3 mil. Okay, now let me start attacking. Once you get into combat, this thing has a chance to proc. And so remember, it procs. The only way that it procs is when you use Holy Light and Flash of Light. All right, you got to understand that. So I'm going to get myself into combat, and then you're going to hear it when it props, right? So check this out. Okay, now I'm going to Flash of Light myself. Hear it? Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to do as much damage and healing as I can. And so I'm just going to keep going, go, go, go. Now you'll see how that buff is still there, still there. Okay, now watch this. I'm going to Holy Shock myself. Literally 3 million, right? That is crazy, crazy, crazy. So whenever you hear that proc, or whenever you see that proc, if you have a weak aura, you can set it up to alert you. And so you really kind of want to not Holy Shock. You want to let that build up every time it procs, and then use it for a monstrous heal, right? So that's how I use it. I wait till it procs, I'll hear it, and then every time I hear that, which it's not all the time, but whenever it like procs, you want to make maximum use out of it, right? So the next thing that you should worry about is the Tears Deliverance. And so Tears Deliverance, remember that this increases allies that are healed by 40% from your Holy Light or your Flash of Light. And so let's just use this real quick. Your artifact ability, you're going to use it. It starts, right? It says that it's healing nearby injured allies. It's kind of like a heal over time. And then every time it heals, it also puts this buff on them. And so I'm taking increased healing by 40% right now. All right, so look at how it's critting, or it's hitting for about 898 non-crit. And then now it's only 641 non-crit. So you really want to use that artifact, make use of that artifact ability. Once you see that that buff is on people, make sure you're using Holy Light and Flash of Light. It'll heal them a lot more. Okay, and then let's go back to these artifact traits real quick. Now your Vindicator. Did you know that when you pop Avenging Wrath, yes, Avenging Wrath lasts for, let's see, so it depends, right? If you're not spec'd for Sanctified Wrath increases the duration. But if you don't have that, then it's going to last for 20 seconds. But the first 10 seconds of that, did you know that you actually get another buff? So the first 10 seconds, you increase your critical healing by 25%. And so we pop Avenging Wrath. Look at, you have two buffs. You have your Avenging Wrath, but you also have increased critical healing by 25%. Let's use it here. I just crit for 2.3 mil. And then I'm going to use it again without that, but I still have Avenging Wrath on. And I have 1.8 mil. Okay, so it's definitely significant to get as much as you're healing off in that first 10 seconds as you can. Obviously, for that additional 10 seconds after, it's still going to be nice too. But make sure that you know this stuff. It's just the more you know, right? One thing that I really would like everybody to know is the Sacred Dawn. Remember that this is going to give you increased healing by 10% for 6 seconds every time you cast Light of Dawn on the person. So that is super strong. The other thing about this is that it has the chance of proccing twice. So Light of Dawn has a 20% chance to cast an additional time for no mana cost. You should be familiar with those two things before you even attempt to use Light of Dawn. You have to aim it. And so if I'm trying to heal this person right here, I'm not going to want to aim right here, right? So I'm not going to aim here. It's not going to affect the person at all. You see how I just got the double cast? But that's not going to help me at all. So I'm going to look over here, or even like if you catch her in the edge of it, remember it's a cone. So even though I'm not looking right at her, she'll still probably get the buff if I cast it right now. See? So she's in the cone, and so you want to make sure you get as many people in that cone as you can, because now she takes 10% increased healing. And anybody who gets hit by it is 10% increased healing. Okay, so another thing that you should know about your artifact is that after you Judgment, you will take 12% reduced damage. And so really, when you wombo combo everything together, I guess you could call it, you have Judgment of Light, right? every time you cast Judgment, you're taking 12% reduced damage for 4 seconds. And if you wear the Crown Jewel, you are doing 15% increased healing for 5 seconds. And Judgment is on approximately a 10-second cooldown. And so if you are judgmenting on cooldown, that is really huge, and that encourages good playstyle. So I'm going to Judgment real quick and show you that that my damage is reduced by 12%. It's called Knight of the Silver Hand, right? I don't know if you ever noticed that before, but these are the things that separate great Holy Paladins from good ones. And so I'm going to Judgment, and look at this, 12% reduced damage. That is huge, especially if you're running Aura of Sacrifice, right? So think about how all of this works together. You have Aura of Sacrifice, which all that damage is being directed to you, but the damage that's being directed to you can then be reduced because your damage that you're taking is being reduced by 12%. And so it's really, really effective to pop every time Judgment is up. You pop it, you get that extra Judgment of Light on there, make sure that's topped off. And this is mainly for a raid scenario, but absolutely awesome, right? So make sure you're aware of that extra damage reduction you're getting every time you Judgment. And that's where that macro comes really in handy, because you don't want to always have to tab target the boss or whatever, right? You just have a nice macro that anytime you're targeted on an ally, you can just hit Judgment and it'll Judgment their target without even you having to target it. So that's a great thing to know. Last thing I think I want to point out is like what the best ones are, right? So your Holy Shock is amazing. Probably Shock Treatment's going to be your best one. Increases the critical strike damage and healing of your Holy Shock by 40%. Well, that's because I think I have an extra point in it or whatever, but the point is it's definitely the one that you want to focus on the most in the Crucible. So you want Shock Treatment, and then another great one is Deliver the Light. And so that's a great one. It focuses on your Holy Light and your Flash of Light. And so Light of the Martyr, if you use it a lot, that might be good too, to try to buff that. And then in terms of the secondary ones, haste is not necessarily our best stat. So you probably want to focus more on the mastery one. So I have a mastery and avoidance Crucible one right now. You can kind of look at my relics right now. So one of them is my damaging spells and abilities have a chance to deal damage, but my healing ones have a chance to absorb damage for me. So that's not that bad. This one gives me 500 mastery and 500 avoidance. I think that's pretty good. This one gives me 500 haste and 500 movement speed. That's okay too. But obviously one that is only buffing your damage is not really ideal, but you can't really choose what you get in the Crucible. It's kind of like luck of the draw, but just make sure you're focused on buffing that Holy Shock, Flash of Light, and Holy Light as much as you can. The other one that you could focus on is your Light of Dawn. So the healing done by your Light of Dawn, and then also the percentage that it has to proc an additional time. That would be one to focus on too. Increasing the healing done by your Light of the Martyr might not be bad either. I use this a lot, probably a lot more than a lot of other Holy Paladins. But Light of the Martyr, increasing the healing done by that probably wouldn't be bad either. So anyway, let's transition into gear now. So I think we've talked fully about our talents and our artifacts. So now we're into gear. All right, so for gear, what we're going to do is let's go over some of the stats real quick. So this is the gear that I'm usually running with, at least at this moment. 951 item level, but that's obviously always changing. Equipped, and then notice how I try to stay as close to 50% crit as I can. So I'm at 48% approximately right now. Haste about 15%. It's really not something that we want to stack as Holy Paladins. It's not super good for us. Then we also have 55% mastery, so I'd probably try to stick over 50% mastery. Seems to be a good thing to have, especially when you are close to the people that you're healing. And so notice how when I'm close to this guy right here, it crits for 1,387,000, and when I stand far away and heal the same person, it's literally only critting for 920,000. So be very aware that your proximity is a big deal, right? So mastery is what affects that. So versatility, however, is something that's nice. It's kind of interchangeable with mastery. Versatility kind of helps you just in general, no matter what range you're at, and mastery really helps you based on how close you are. So you just kind of want to keep those two as your second priority. So first priority, critical strike. Second priorities are versatility and mastery. And then I got some avoidance and stuff, but that's not a big deal. So that's the stat priority. And then in terms of the gear, obviously it's going to continue to change based on you know, the expansion and the raids that are out, and the patch, the current patch, and the current meta and all that. But at the moment, I'm wearing 4 set TOS. And so you just remember, you want to make maximum use of anything that you're wearing, anything that you're doing. And so you need to know information about this stuff. This is going to reduce the cooldown of your Light of Dawn by 2 seconds. So it is allowing you to Light of Dawn more often. And if you notice, every time you Light of Dawn, you're also transferring additional 40% of your beacon to your 40% of your healing goes to your beacon target after you Light of Dawn. So you want to pretty much be Light of Dawning on cooldown if you were to have this gear right here. And so you go over to the new set of gear, and you have a different bonus. And so I'm rocking 2 set right now with this. Flash of Light and Holy Light transfer 40% additional healing to your beacon target. That bonus is helping you out, and I'm eventually probably going to wear 4 set, and so that's going to make my Holy Shock deal has a chance to increase the critical healing of my spells. And so you want to make maximum use of Holy Shock. I was considering going, once I get that legendary ring, I was considering going Divine Purpose, or just going Divine Purpose straight up, just to get the chance at doing more Holy Shocks, because the more Holy Shocks you get off, the more that's going to proc. And it doesn't seem to be on a deck system. In other words, it pretty much can proc as much or as little as you want it to. And so the more Holy Shocks you're getting off, the better. Also, that makes Crusader's Might potentially an interesting choice too, because you want to get it off as many Holy Shocks as you can in order to get that 4-piece to proc. So that just gives you an idea of how you would use set bonuses, right? So you're looking at a set bonus, you're making sure you use that to the fullest. And then legendaries, so I usually use the Crown Jewel. That's just something that encourages positive play style. It encourages you to use your judgment. And we know that when we judgment, we get reduced damage taken. We know that when we judgment, if we're using this ring, we're going to get increased healing done. We know that when we're judgmenting, we're doing damage, which is obviously helping too. We know that when we're judging, if we have Judgment of Light, it's going to apply that Judgment of Light. So it's really a strong legendary if and only if you are pretty much using Judgment on cooldown. And so Pride-As, I think, is number 1. It is super good. And so the reason why you love Pride-As is because, think about it, Holy Paladins have probably more health than any other healer. So I'm sitting at like 6.5 million health right now. That's probably more than any other healer. Here's another, I think, Holy Paladin. And yeah, they have like 6 million. Okay, but the point is, you have over 6 million health a lot of times as a Holy Paladin. That's a lot, and you take 25% of that, and then you just add it to your health pretty much. And the cool thing about that is you can see that absorb right here is the little white stuff, and then I can Light of the Martyr, and it actually, I just Light of the Martyr for 1.5 mil. It literally costs nothing, right? I mean, I just healed this person for 1.5 million, and it didn't even cost me anything. It literally just took my shield, right? So super good. I mean, look at how many of these Light of the Martyrs I'm getting off for free, and then it starts doing damage to me. But then I can continue to do this, right? And I'm going to get myself low, but watch, my Pride-As is about to come back on. There it is again. Now I just get free heals. Look at that. Free heals. So it's super good. Also, think about how Pride-As is working with your Aura of Sacrifice. Pride-As is going to, you know, absorb a lot of that damage that you're taking, because you're taking 10% of all the damage that nearby people are taking if you're using Aura of Sacrifice, which is usually what I use for raiding. So I mean, it just works out so good, and I would definitely recommend these two legendaries at the moment. However, there are other legendaries, right? So there are like Velens. I haven't upgraded it yet, but I do have Velens, the trinket. And so right now I'm rocking this Vitality Resonator. I just got lucky with the Titan Forge. I got a 965 version of this, and they just buffed it with the recent patch. And it actually is looking pretty strong. And so I did macro it to my judgment, because I really want to make maximum use of this. But I kind of did the calculations, and it pretty much is equivalent, if not better, than popping Avenging Wrath. It's really cool. So it's like every 1 minute you get an Avenging Wrath for 15 seconds. That's like, it's like 15,000 intellect. So let me just give you an idea, right? So I'm gonna Holy Shock myself for 1.3 mil. Now I'm going to proc my trinket. Okay, it's right here. You can see the cooldown, and then so 1.3 mil. Let's see the difference here. I'm gonna pop it. You'll notice I have some other buffs too, but just okay. Look at this. Ready? It's on me. That's 2.2 mil. Okay, that's ridiculous. Now I also have concordance, so let's get a better idea. Ready? Here we go. 1.7 mil. So I mean, it's a significant amount that it's going to increase your healing, and it's up every minute for 15 seconds. So and it also encourages me to use my judgment, because if I'm using my judgment on cooldown, I bound it so that it's you actually have to target an enemy to get this to work. So that's why I use that, just macroed to my judgment. All right, so now you have Deceiver's Grand Design. I really love to use this when I'm worried that my tanks might die, so I just put that on them. You literally can always keep it up. If it falls off, that means it did its job, right? It gave a 2.2 million damage absorb. So the trinket off kill Jaden's super good. Gives you that mastery. If I were to swap it out, I have a couple other options. So I have the Velens, right? I could swap out either one of these trinkets. I'd probably swap out the Deceiver maybe for Velens. But Velens, remember, you don't want to use Velens unless you have a purpose, and unless you are going to make maximum use of it. It does have a weird cooldown. It's 1 minute and 15 seconds, and I have used it before. I usually like keybind it to my Ore Mastery or one of my other monster seals, and I try to use it as much as I can, but it's really mainly going to help you when the raid has just taken a ridiculous amount of damage. So if you know that there's a part of the fight where you need to top somebody off, like the whole raid, and it does happen a lot, Velens is going to be strong. The only thing I find with Velens is that it's too much. I find it being too much. I find that even without Velens, I can do what Velens allows other healers to do, right? Because that's just the way Holy Paladins work. Like when I pop Aura Mastery with my Aura of Sacrifice, it's just, there's no need for Velens really. So I do like Velens. I have used it, but I tend right now to stick with the Crown Jewel and the Prides. Other options would be this ring right here, the other ring, so the Soul of the High Lord, which I don't have yet, but getting that extra, getting that divine purpose, but also having Holy Avenger at the same time, that would be super cool, especially with the 4 set, remember I said? So with that 4 set, you want to get off as many Holy Shocks as you can. It would also help your mana efficiency. And so I would recommend trying that out. I don't have it yet, but I would definitely try it out if I got it. The belt I don't find as useful, because your Avenging Wrath is already crazy. When you pop Avenging Wrath, you're probably going to be overhealing anyway. You don't need an additional 25% to that. So I find the chain really not as helpful. Safuz could be helpful if you're dispelling and able to stun. So like sometimes for Mythic Plus dungeons, I'll wear Safuz. And then the other legendaries have their uses too. I used to use the gloves a lot because I found like, oh wow, I can get my lay on hands to like a 1.5 minute cooldown, right? But then I found that like once I got better gear, I pretty much already have a lay on hands with my Holy Shock sometimes. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm throwing out heals that are equivalent to a lay on hands. So it really, you don't need it. You know, if you're healing really good, you shouldn't need a 1.5 minute cooldown lay on hands. So that you would consider this one of the worst legendaries. You know, one that's not really that good. The bracers is alright. I used that for a while too. Actually, the bracers and the gloves were like the first ones I got. The bracers is okay, but keep in mind the Blessing of Freedom is on like 33,000 mana, right? So that is more mana than 10,000 more mana than a Holy Shock. So you probably don't want to use these bracers. It's alright, but I mean, you don't really want to use them unless you don't have anything else. So then the Topless Tower, that one is way too random for me. I tried it out, but way too random. If you're popping your Light of Dawn on cooldown, that would be the maximum use that you would get out of here, especially if you had your Divine Purpose, proccing instant cast ones, and then you could maybe get this Topless Tower to activate a bunch, but I just find it way too random. And then that 8 seconds of Avenging Wrath just seems like nothing, and a lot of times it happens when you don't even need to heal at all, so it's just not making maximum use of that legendary, right? So this is really hard to make a maximum use out of, so you don't want to use the Topless Tower. And then the back is very controllable. It's very predictable. It's very easy to maximize this. You make sure that you get your Light of Dawn on as many people as you can. I think I have this legendary as well somewhere in my inventory. I think I might have thrown it in my bank, but I don't really use it much anymore. But it is nice for sniping heals. So pretty much if you Light of Dawn a whole bunch of people, and then you know that for each person that it hits, it increases Light of the Martyr healing by 10%. You know that your next Light of the Martyr is just going to, you know, really top somebody off. So if you know somebody needs a big heal, just, you know, Light of the Dawn, and then use that Light of the Martyr right after. It's super good. So back is not too bad. Definitely one of the better ones. And then the Obsidian Shoulders, I don't find these very good. I think it kind of works against what Prides is trying to do. Like, I don't know, I feel like you're all about trying to reduce the damage you take, and all the healing that 30% of any healing done to you heals all allies affected by your beacons evenly. So it's, I don't know, I don't really find these shoulders very good. I have them, but I personally would never wear them the way that it reads right now. And the Agromar Stride's good for, like, if you need extra movement speed for, like, running something real quick. But I think that's pretty much it. We went over all that, so very in detail. The effects of the Netherlight Crucible, the only way you're going to maximize this ring is if you have amazing Crucible traits, right? If you had all of your stuff in your Crucible perfect, like all the best stuff, then this might be worth it. But right now, like, I have some ones that aren't very good, and so it says it increases the effects of the light and shadow powers granted by the Netherlight Crucible. I'm assuming you're going to want to make sure that the stuff that's in your Crucible is really good to make use of this, and I just find that I probably won't use this, but we'll see. Anyway, that covers the legendaries, and that covers a lot of the gear. I think that for sockets, you're going to want to go with 200 crit for the majority of your stuff. For enchants on your back, you're going to go with 200 intellect. For your enchant on your neck, I went with Mark of the Claw. I don't know. I used to go with the Ancient Priestess. But if you look at the heal from the Ancient Priestess, it's really a joke. So here's the Ancient Priestess. And permanently enchants a necklace to sometimes heal a nearby ally for 300,000. I don't know, it's not that bad, but it's just it seems to me like that extra haste when the Mark of the Claw procs, because it does proc a lot, and the extra crit, like for example, let me get it to proc real quick. All right, so watch my crit and haste. So instantly procced, my crit goes up to 50.31, and this goes up to about 18. So I gain about 3% haste and 2% crit, approximately, every time that procs, and the Mark of the Claw does proc quite a bit, so I do find Mark of the Claw pretty useful, and it just procs randomly while you're in combat, so it's not really controllable, but hey, it does help. And then I personally have the Goblin Glider Cloak and the Rocket Boots. I really find Rocket Boots useful, so I can I can Rocket Boot, and it really helps my mobility. And think that's pretty much it for the gear. You're going to be looking for crit gear and like crit verse, crit mastery. Like if we look at our tier right now, raid for Antorus, it looks like the bosses that we're going to be looking out for, the tier bosses. So Antoran High Command drops the cape. That's going to be good for us. However, Drape of Shame is something that's amazing. So I have a lower level Drape of Shame, and so right here, 915 Drape of Shame. I was using this over like a 940. The only reason I'm not using Drape of Shame right now is because I have a 945 tier, and I'm trying to get my 2 set. But it kind of is unfortunate because Drape of Shame is amazing unless they nerf it from lower Kara. Increases your critical healing by 5%. Super good, especially with the amount of crit that we have. However, the tier cloak is one of our best pieces, so you're going to be looking to get that off of Antoran High Command. For Portal Keeper, you will see that it kind of drops a pretty good waste for us. So crit mastery, I'm just kind of giving you an idea what to look for, right? You don't really need all the tier. The chest I was lucky enough to get at 970, so that's a really good piece for us. Crit haste, anything with crit on it, really. Then you got Iminar drops our best life relic. So this relic is I got it at 960. Increases the critical strike damage and healing of your holy shock by 40%. That's super good. It's like our that shock treatment's like our best one. So you're gonna be looking for Iminar for that one. Kingaroth, you're gonna be looking at a versatility mastery. Really not that bad. Remember, those stats are pretty equivalent. They're just below crit, so gloves are pretty good tier piece. Even though it doesn't give crit, because you're not going to crit on all your stuff. However, I did consider running 4-set, 2-set, because I have 950 TOS, and then was going to run some Mythic TOS to get the higher version of these gloves, and maybe run 4-set, 2-set for the reduced cooldown on Light of Dawn. But we'll see. We'll see how things play out. But remember, maximum use on whatever you choose. So make sure you have a reason to do it. Shoulders, haste versatility. I would probably stay away from the pieces that give haste. And Agrimar, one of our best pieces right here. Arguably the best one. And it gives, it mains crit and then off mastery. So, I mean, really amazing for us. So I'm looking to get that right now. I'm wearing a 915 one because I'm trying to keep my 4-set, but this one I definitely can't wait to get. So the headpiece is something to really look for off Agrimar. Also, Iminar drops the legs. The legs, yet again, they give haste. I would try to stay away from the haste pieces. So your legs, you're probably not going to want to use those. But hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. Alright, it looks like there's a trinket too. I have not gotten this yet, but this trinket here drops off of Coven, and it gives mastery, and it says your healing effects have a chance to apply a charge of this thing for 1 minute, and it has a maximum of 5 charges, and when the ally falls below 50% health, it instantly heals them, and it's that for 300,000 per charge. And I saw a lot of healers using this, including Paladins, so if you get High Fathers, that seems like a decent choice to try it out. So make sure you're making use of that, though. If you're on a fight where people aren't really dropping below 50% health, then this might not be for you. It might not be a good choice. I like things that I can control a little bit better than that, so you'll notice how both of my trinkets have use effects, so I can control when they're being used. Also, you got to understand that there's a trinket that drops in Tomb that's still good for us. Unfortunately, on Mythic, she's still pretty hard, but C-Star, right? So I still have a pretty high C-Star. I don't use it as much. I don't have it high enough to be better than my 965, that's for sure. I think I have it at like 900 or not, like 915, maybe 920 or something like that. But yeah, C-Star is still one of our best trinkets if you can get it at a super high Titan Forge. So C-Star is kind of based on Light of Dawn though. And if the reason why I think it was so good is with our bonus, like we were all about Light of Dawn, right? And now we're not as much about Light of Dawn. So the new tier is going to, it's not going to encourage you to use Light of Dawn as much. So it doesn't really depend at all on Light of Dawn, except for if you get that bonus, the 4-set, then it is going to increase your healing, your critical healing of Light of Dawn by 100%. But it's nowhere near what the set bonuses were for TOS. So TOS all about Light of Dawn, and so C-Star naturally was an amazing trinket because of that. You're popping Light of Dawn on cooldown, it's going to be super good. So C-Star I feel is not going to be as good with the new tier set. It'll still be pretty good though. Another thing for trinkets you should probably consider is these trinkets here that drop off Argus. We look here and we see this one, this legendary one, it does not count as far as I know as one of your legendaries, so you can actually wear this, which is super awesome. It's a huge stat stick, kind of like Arcano Crystal, which yet again is kind of ridiculous if you get a high one, but this Amandul's Vision, something that we might want to look into as Holy Paladins. Gives us a whole bunch of leech and avoidance, which would be nice. Speed would kind of be helpful too, but leech would allow us to heal ourselves, and avoidance would allow us to take less damage. So that might be nice if it has a chance to proc that. Plus, it's just a huge stat stick. And then if you look at the other ones here, this one, your healing effects, so this compassion one, have a chance to grow and blossom, and it heals random injured allies. So it kind of depends on maybe how much this procs. I don't really like trinkets that give a chance to do something. I don't know. I just prefer to know what's happening and when it's happening. But hey, it could be good. So those are two trinkets that you might want to look into as well. So I think that covers most of the gear, and let's move on to playstyle. So I think that covers most of the gear. Let's move on to mods and things like that. So for me, I'm using Z-Perl. It used to be called Z-Perl, now it's called Z-Perl, and so Z-Perl is for my interface, and so that's where I get these 3D portraits from. I can move them all around. I have a focus target as well. It pops up down here. You can drag all this around. This is just how I like it. And so just the general rule of thumb while we're talking about this, the whole purpose of mods, you don't really need them, but the whole purpose of them is to allow you to better access information about the game. So if you think about it, the game is just all about making decisions, and when you're making these decisions, you want to have easy access to information that's going to allow you to make better and quicker decisions, so more effective decisions. So really what I do is I usually you have your target and like your health bar up here in the top left, right? That's worthless to me. Nobody looks at the top left of their screen usually. I mean, I don't, at least. So for me, I'm looking at what I'm doing. I'm looking at my feet, making sure I'm not standing in anything. So I want my vision to be here in the center of the screen. Stuff that doesn't matter is off to the sides. And so that's just a general rule of thumb. So that's how I set up my interface here. Now you can also move the generic Blizzard ones too. It doesn't matter. Like, You can use a different mod, but I just think that this looks nice and clean. It also shows my absorb on my Prides, shows my buffs nicely, counting down for me. I can adjust how big they are. I can adjust how big the debuffs are. So, for example, if I were to target, let's say this target dummy, and I use my judgment. If I want this to be super big, I can make it super big, and I can look at, see when my judgment falls off. I can also set my focus on that person, put my judgment on, and then I can target something else. I can easily monitor that judgment right there on my focus target. So pretty cool. I like it. Let's move on. So next one would be Bartender. I use Bartender 4. I really like having clean bars and being able to move them anywhere I want and adjust the size of them and everything. So I chose to have my extra action button right here. If I want to press it or keybind it, it's like right here. My vehicle bar, zone ability, like for your follower. I have a pet bar here, which I usually don't use as a paladin, and then all my buffs and food buffs and like stuff that I don't really care about usually is down here, except for like drums every now and then, and like my cloak that I need to use for my goblin glider and / focus macro and things like that. My mounts, just stuff that I don't care as much about, is down at the bottom. It's like preparation for a fight or after a fight. And then I got my bags and all that over here, and this is over here. This is just stuff that I don't usually care much about during the fight. So everything I care about is in my vision during the fight. And so let's go over some keybinds. Really nice thing about Bartender is that you can just literally hit the keybinds and just do a keybind of whatever you want. I have a mouse that has 12 buttons on the side, so you might not have that, but my mouse with 12 buttons allows me to go through each one of these and keybind whatever I want, and I literally have this entire first thing on my mouse. So number 1 on my mouse, shift 1. So remember, I try to keep abilities that are closely related to each other. I put a lot of thought into this as to how I have this set up, and I've changed it multiple times, and I continue to change it. I don't change it anywhere near as much as I used to. But this is just makes sense to me. You have to have fluidity. I mean, you have to be fluid in how you play. You can't be thinking about what you're doing. Everything has to feel good. You have to, it sounds corny, but you have to kind of connect with your character and just do the things that you need to do without thinking. And so for that, keybinds in the right places really helps. If you're going to use Holy Shock the most, and it's like a super important ability, why not put that as number 1? It's an instant cast. You're going to use it a bunch. Same thing with Light of Dawn. The only thing I do is I do 1 and then shift 1 for modifier. Then Flash of Light. And so Flash of Light is number 2. You're going to use that a bunch, and then shift for the Holy Light. So that makes sense to have those abilities on the same button. They're just separated by a shift modifier. Now Crusader Strike and Consecration. Okay, well, you have your single target damage and you got your AoE damage, so that makes sense to have those separated by a shift modifier. Then you got your instant cast interesting abilities, so like other heals, like what are you going to do when your Holy Shock's on cooldown type of heals for instant cast. So you got your Bestow Faith if you're running that, and then you got your Light of the Martyr. Also that turns into Light's Hammer. If I'm running Light's Hammer, I can use that same keybind to drop my Light's Hammer down. So then we got our Hammer, the Hammer of Justice. So Hammer of Justice, nice stun. You're going to use that a bunch, so that's on 5. Shift 5 is my taunt. You might not think that you're going to use this, but you do. If you're playing at a high level, you'll know. Okay, it's super useful to taunt at various times. And that's part of your job as a healer, to prevent people from dying. Well, what happens if your tank dies? What happens if your tank dies and you're in the process of battle resing him, but now the boss is about to one-shot all of your melee? You can taunt the boss. You can kite that boss around while your tank is getting the battle res, and that saves lives. So it's super useful to have taunt on your toolbar, and so that is keybound. And then I have Judgment, and so this is kind of like damage, but it also buffs my heals, and then same thing with my artifact ability. Now this is the same across all 3 specs. So before we go any further, let me show you what the other specs look like. I play all 3, and so watch the consistency across all 3 specs. It's very important. So my heal, Flash of Light, same exact keybind as before. The one that I'm spamming, Shield of the Righteous, same exact keybind as my Holy Shock was. But notice how Flash of Light's in the same place. Notice how Consecrate's in the same place. Notice how Hammer of Justice and Hand of Reckoning, my taunt, and my Judgment and my artifact ability, all in the same place. You can go to Retribution. Go to Retribution. It's all in the same place. What am I spamming? Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm, right? That's my main damage. Then I have Flashlight, same place. Justicar's Vengeance or whatever I'm running, that's another way to heal myself. My 2 builders are in the same place, and then I have my Hammer of Justice. This Rebuke is in the same place as it was with Prot. Hammer of Justice, same place. Taunt, same place for all 3 specs, very important. Judgment and artifact ability, same exact place. Notice how also my Divine Shield is all in the same place. My my big ability, like my Avenging Wrath, is on R. I got my Aura Mastery on X right now. I got Repentance Keybound for when I actually use it, but I don't use it all that, like, it is nice to have it keybound, but it's not on something that I need to get to a lot, so Shift X is fine. And then Divine Steed is B, Shift B for my Rocket Boots, Cleanse, and then Beacon. It is useful to keybind your Beacon, for sure. And then I got my blessings all down here. I got Q and Shift Q for my Blessing of Freedom and Blessing of Sacrifice. And then think about this for a second. So if you need to react to somebody who's about to die, you have a super powerful cooldown, right? It's called Lay on Hands. And if you want to use that most effectively, you have to have it keybound. You do, right? You can't click on it. By the time you do that, okay, let's just say your tank dropped to 1%. What do? Your tank dropped to 1%. You have to, within 1 second, be able to react to that and pop Lay on Hands. Boom. So I have my 2 oh crap buttons. They're on the same exact keybind, and so it's just my mouse wheel. So I press my mouse wheel down and I have Lay on Hands, and then I do Shift mouse wheel for my Blessing of Protection. And then my trinket, my human trinket, is F. And then when I go into PvP, my other trinket, my honorable medallion or whatever, that's Shift F. And then I have my Healthstone and my Potion of Prolonged Power keybound. Sometimes I'll drag this out to some other potion, and then I can, a lot of times I just click on Lay Torrent or Ancient Mana Potion if I need it. But yeah, that just kind of summarizes how I have Bartender set up in terms of my keybinds. It's super useful to me to have them set up the way that they are and consistent across all 3 specs. I put a lot of thought into how it's set up right now. I also put all my main abilities on the top, notice, so it's right under my feet, so I'm always looking at my feet. A lot of people like to put their raid frames right below, and then they like to put their abilities somewhere else. That's fine too. I prefer that my raid frames are over here, so I actually heal. Sometimes it extends all the way over to here, which is crazy if there's like a huge group, but I like to heal off to the right here, and so I'm consistently looking kind of like middle to the right of my screen. I don't look as much to the left, but to the left you'll see that every now and then I'll look at the damage taken and healing done to monitor what's going on there. But overall, I'm mainly looking off to the right a little bit and making sure you're looking at your feet. So that, I think, like I said, summarizes the Bartender. Let's go into something else here. So I have WeakAuras, so /WeakAura. And so I have WeakAuras set up for a bunch of stuff, as you can see. I have WeakAuras set up for my Concordance proccing. I have WeakAuras set up for Safaz Secret when I wear that. Monitor the 30-second internal cooldown. Remember, anytime you don't think you're making maximum use of something, you can use WeakAuras to help you. you can make it so that it alerts you. So if I go to like Crusade or like Avenging Wrath, right, I have it so that it triggers a sound of a roaring lion every time this thing shows. So right now it's set to trigger when the cooldown's ready. And you can go through, and I actually made one for Holy Shock, so it makes a gunshot noise, and I have a cha-ching sound for my judgment. And so anything that's important to you that you don't think that you're using well, you can help yourself with using sound, right? So if you're looking at what's going on around you, which you should be during a boss fight, you're not going to have as much time to be looking down at your cooldowns. So why not have your cooldowns alert themselves to you by using WeakAuras or some other mod that alerts you when your cooldowns are ready? It's super useful. Something that has really upped my game. And remember, it's the difference between a good and a great Holy Paladin. Just these little things. Are you using your artifact ability on cooldown? Or maybe not on cooldown, but do you know when it's ready again? Sometimes before I used WeakAuras, somebody would die, or like we would wipe, and then I would look and I was like, oh no, I actually had my Avenging Wrath up. I could have saved us. Or oh no, my Aura Mastery just came up. I just didn't realize it. Right? So if you find yourself saying that, then you should probably get WeakAuras or some way of alerting you that your cooldowns are up. Also, I have GTFO. It's a mod that allows you to, it just literally makes a annoying sound anytime you're standing in something that you shouldn't be. So that's another sound feedback that you can use. So if you're accidentally standing in a puddle, sometimes it's super useful, especially when like you don't think you're standing in something, but you actually are. It will tell you, I think based on your combat log, whether or not you're standing in it. So if you're taking damage from something that you're not supposed to be standing in, then it'll yell at you, and it's super useful. So that would be GTFO, and that pretty much wraps up the modifications that I use in terms of like bartender interface and like for Z-Perl, and then WeakAuras and GTFO, and that's the majority of it. If you look at the macros though, remember I do have a bunch of macros just to make my life more simple. So like if I use Aura Mastery, it's automatically gonna use Velens. If it's equipped, it's automatically gonna use Rule of Law. It's automatically going to use my trinket as well, even though it's probably going to be on cooldown. But I just wanted to make sure that that's being used. And then also my Avenging Wrath, same deal. So anytime I pop Avenging Wrath and I pop my Aura Mastery, my Rule of Law is going to proc as well. So that's just something that I chose to do. I might not choose to do that in the future. But I can also pop Rule of Law manually when I want to by using this macro. So whenever I want to, I can use my artifact ability to pop Rule of Law. So just different macros is super nice to have sometimes. Oh, also a bubble macro. This is awesome. I only use for prot actually, because I find myself like killing myself by accident. But this macro right here allows you to pop bubble once. So check this out. So I'll just use it for a second. I don't usually like to use it as holy. Let's see if I just messed that up or not. Yeah, I just messed that up. But I have it, luckily. I accidentally deleted it. Here it is. So I'll save it. There we go. Okay, so now watch how this works. And I'm just going to press E, and it's going to allow me to bubble, right? And then I'm just going to press E again. See, watch it, and it falls off. So it allows you to press E and then press E again to remove it. That really is only useful for prot. So I don't use it for holy, but it is a super nice macro, and it's just another example of something that you can definitely use to help you up your game a little bit. And so when you're ready, you just find that ability in your toolbook, put it back on, and Divine Protection, super useful. Make sure you're making good use of that. I probably should set up a WeakAura for that, but it reduces all damage you take by 20% for 12 seconds. Make sure that you're using that. It's only a 1 minute cooldown. Make sure you use that as much as you can. And it's going to reduce the damage that you take, because you're your whole spec is based on taking damage. So I think that wraps up. We got macros, we got add-ons, we got keybinds, all that sort of stuff, right? So now let's get into play style. So the way that you're going to play, let's first go over damage. So it's super nice to be able to understand how a Holy Paladin does damage, because a lot of times you're going to be doing damage when there's nothing else to be doing. So real quick, let me go over how you would do damage. So you're probably going to want to go Crusader's Might and Sanctified Wrath. So this would be like a Mythic Plus build that I have right now. So let's just pretend I'm going into a Mythic Plus and I want to do a bunch of damage. And so keep your eyes on the damage meter, I guess. So I'm going to start off, and I'll pop my Holy Avenger and I'll pop my Avenging Wrath. You don't necessarily have to do that. But the goal is to maximize your Holy Shock. You'll notice, we'll do the breakdown after, but the Holy Shock is going to be the majority of your damage in Crusader Strike, but also notice that your Judgment increases the damage done by those. And so here's what you need to do. You need to start off probably with the Judgment, right? Because you're not going to want to do a Crusader Strike or a Holy Shock until it's buffed. So you're going to want a Judgment, then you're going to want to get your Holy Shock on cooldown immediately. So Judgment, Holy Shock. And what that's going to do is going to put your Holy Shock on cooldown and allow you to use Crusader Strike, and then the Crusader Strike is going to reduce the cooldown of your Holy Shock. So you're going to go Judgment, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, and then because we're running Sanctified Wrath, every time you use your Holy Shock, that cooldown is going to be reduced by 50%. So it's going to allow you to do some pretty nasty things. So check this out. You ready? So I'm going to, I'll pop Holy Avenger. I'll pop the Holy Avenger and Avenging Wrath first. Here we go. So I pop that, and then you literally alternate now between Crusader Strike and Holy Shock. Then I do my Judgment again, Crusader Strike. Look at, I'm at 1.7 mil. Like, isn't that crazy? So 1.5 mil. I'm literally bursting well over 1.5 million DPS. I already did 27 million damage, and that was pretty short. So look at the damage breakdown real quick, just to make sure you understand your priority. Your priority is Holy Shock. It did 50% of that damage was coming from Holy Shock. Crusader Strike 23%, Judgment 14%, Melee 7%. Right, so really you want to focus on getting as many Holy Shocks off as you possibly can. And so being able to alternate between Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, super awesome. Really helps out in Mythic Pluses when you're trying to kill the boss as quick as possible. Or if you're just trying to clear trash, if you look at the end of a dungeon and you're sitting at 0 damage done, or like, you know, a couple million or whatever, then that's a joke. Right, you should be at probably, I don't know, at least 300k DPS overall for a Mythic Plus dungeon. You need to be in there swinging your sword and doing some damage, right? Anytime you don't need to be doing healing, you should be doing damage, and now you just learned how to do damage. The only thing I didn't mention is your Consecrate. So whenever you can fit extra damage in there, your Consecrate's not going to do that much, but whenever you can fit it in there, especially for AoE, it is going to do a lot. You're going to want to pop that Consecration and make sure that your Consecration's always down. So fit that into the rotation. And so we pretty much just went over all your damaging abilities, right? So you have Holy Shock and Crusader Strike. Make sure you buff it with Judgment before you use it as much as you can. And then Consecration for AoE. And work it in there for single target too when you can. When you don't have Avenging Wrath and Holy Avenger, there will be some downtime, and you can work in a Consecration too. So now you know how to do damage a little bit better maybe than you did before. And then we will go into healing. And so healing, the majority of what you're doing is keeping Holy Shock on cooldown. So anytime you see somebody low, you're going to Holy Shock. And really healing as a Holy Paladin revolves around your Holy Shock and getting this infusion of light. This infusion of light will last quite a while, and it buffs your next Flash of Light or Holy Light. And so I can use a Holy Light right now real quick. It's going to be super fast. Let me just show you something really cool. So here's a Holy Light, and it casts, and it went off for 600k, right? And here's a Flash of Light. It went off for 600 some k. They heal pretty much about the same. If you look at the tooltip or whatever, it's pretty much the same. The main difference is the cast time and the mana cost. So Flash of Light is going to be, if you find yourself spamming Flash of Light all the time and you're wondering why you're out of mana, then that's why. Okay, not very hard to explain that one. So you want to stay away from Flash of Light in terms of mana efficiency. You want to try to heal with your other spells. And Holy Light really does a good job. But keep in mind, when you use your Infusion of Light, now here's where the real difference comes. Yes, you can do a fast Holy Light, but if you choose to do a Flash of Light right now, it's going to heal a lot more than 600k. It's going to heal more like 1,000,000. So, non-crit. So you really want to make a quick decision whether or not do you need a lot of extra healing or do you just need a mana efficient heal for Holy Light. And so every time you Holy Shock, most likely it's going to crit. Depends on your crit, but you're going to get that Infusion of Light. You got to ask yourself, what are you going to do with it? Every time you get Infusion of Light, are you going to waste it? Are you going to use it? How are you going to use it? Are you going to do a Flashlight or are you going to do a Holy Light? So that's huge on a Paladin. Now, what are you doing in the meantime? Well, obviously you're judgmenting on cooldown. I would just recommend doing this all the time. It's good playstyle, but especially if you have the Crown Jewel and especially if you have Judgment of Light. So that's when you're really going to want to use it. But it's doing damage, right? Any extra damage is going to help. It does, I mean, look, watch. So I do it. That was just like an extra 500k damage that I just did. So 500,000 damage every time I use that. And it also, it really helps because, like I said, I use that legendary. So make sure you're judgmenting on cooldown. Make sure that you are throwing in some Light of the Martyr. So I use Light of the Martyr all the time. So let's say people are right about to die. Let's say like you're healing your party and 3 people are low, and you need to heal them up to prevent them from dying real quick. Well, we could Light of the Martyr 1 real quick, and then switch over to that guy, Light of the Martyr him, Light of the Martyr, and just get them like to the point where they're survivable, and then waste the time for the Flashlight. Because if you try to use a Flashlight or a Holy Light, like while your Holy Shock's on cooldown, your target might die before that cast goes off. So really, I use Light of the Martyr all the time to save people's lives. So Light of the Martyr is super good for just taking somebody who's at like 5%, 10% health and just getting them over that threshold so that they can survive until my Holy Shock and my other stuff is back on cooldown. But be super careful because you can kill yourself, and I actually have killed myself before. Not like I pretty much got myself too low and then I got hit by a boss mechanic. So look at what it does. It says you take damage equal to 42% of the healing done. You are going to be taking damage, and so if you're not careful, you will kill yourself. And this is a good point to pop Bestow Faith. So how are you going to use Bestow Faith? Well, here you go. Let's get some Light of the Martyrs off. Here we go. Light of the Martyr. Notice I'm going to break through my shield, and I'll show you how this works. Okay, so I know that I'm going to be taking damage. So I'm gonna do my Bestow Faith on myself, and then I'm going to Light of the Martyr. Watch. So I'm going to get myself low, and then I'm back up to full. So it just goes off. I know I'm taking predictable damage, and so that's a nice way to use my Light of the Martyr. And notice I already can use it again. So. Really good way to use Bestow Faith and Light of the Martyr, and look at how they're on the same keybind too. Also using Light of the Martyr on the tank. Let's say, hey, this person's tanking. He's about to take damage in 5 seconds or whatever. I know, or let's say the raid's about to take damage in 5 seconds. I better have that Bestow Faith off because that's going to be popping right when people take damage. You have to be able to predict damage taken to use Bestow Faith properly. And so that kind of summarizes the healing. And now let's go over the healing cooldowns. So we haven't really touched that. So the healing cooldowns, you have your artifact weapon, you have your Holy Avenger if you spec for it, you have your Avenging Wrath, you have your Aura Mastery. And then you have like any trinkets that you have and things like that. But those are your main ones. And so how do you use each one effectively? Well, I like to use Tier when I like to use it predictively. Because if I know that the raid is about to take damage, I can pop this because it's a long cast time. It really is. It sucks. So look at this. Look at how long it took that to get off, and then it's finally getting out and doing what it's supposed to do. You really need, before you pop tier, like, you need to know, you can't really pop this reactively. You have to pop this as a prediction of damage. So you know there's a bunch of damage about to come out, you pop tier. That's what I do. You get that floating around in the raid, and then you're good to go. That's how I always use my artifact weapon here, is I use it before I know that there's a bunch of damage about to happen. I don't waste the cast time when the damage has already happened, because people could die. So, and your job as a healer is to save lives. Don't forget that. It's not about the healing meters. Healing meters tell you a little bit, but it's about saving lives. If nobody dies, you did your job. So, Holy Avenger, you're going to pop this when you need extra haste and when you're Holy Shocking. So remember, to make full use of this cooldown, you need to be Holy Shocking. Every time you pop Holy Avenger, pop it, you need to be Holy Shocking right away. First thing you should do right after you pop Holy Avenger, Holy Shock. And every single time after that, Holy Shock. You have to make sure you're making maximum use of Holy Shock when you pop this ability, because that's really what it's buffing. So Holy Shock, and then obviously you have your extra haste, so you can spam some stuff, and then Holy Shock, boom. And then you can spam because you got the extra haste, right? And then Holy Shock. So that is really a nice cooldown to pop, and I usually pop them separately. So Avenging Wrath, super good. 2-minute cooldown. Usually the first thing I do after Avenging Wrath, yet again, is Holy Shock. If something's really going wrong, then I can pop Holy Avenger and Avenging Wrath together, because all I have to do is Shift R and then R. I can do that super quick. And I can pop both of them together, and then the first ability I pop is Holy Shock. So watch this. So I'm going to heal myself. There's 1.338 mil, and then if I were to pop just Avenging Wrath, and then the first thing I do is Holy Shock. Ready? And first thing I did is it's instant 2.4 million heal at least. So super useful to be able to do that. And if somebody's low, like I said, instead of lay on hands, maybe you want to do, maybe you don't have lay on hands, maybe you're going to do Avenging Wrath, Holy Shock, and then you just pop them back up, maybe followed by a Light of the Martyr, right? So Light of the Martyr is going to crit for like 2 million too, potentially. So that's how you heal people up real quick. So that's how you use those cooldowns. Aura Mastery depends on what aura you're using. Devotion aura you have to use preventatively, like your raid's about to take a bunch of damage, or your party's about to take a bunch of damage. Otherwise, this is useless. If you don't use Devotion aura properly, it's useless, because if you're popping it just randomly when nobody's taking damage, you literally just wasted a 3-minute cooldown. Good job, right? So you don't want to do that. Now, Aura Mastery, same deal. You don't, any of these, you have to know what your stuff does before you just pop Aura Mastery. You need to make sure that when you pop Aura Mastery, you get as much healing out. If you have Aura of a Sacrifice, you get as much healing done in those seconds as you can. So right, it lasts for 8 seconds. So you have 8 seconds to do a bunch of healing, super amounts of healing. And if you have Aura of Sacrifice, that healing is going to spread to everybody else. And so definitely make sure that before you pop Aura Mastery, first of all, there has to be healing to be done. So this is more of a reaction thing, where this is more of a prediction. So you're predicting damage with Devotion Aura, and you're reacting to a bunch of damage with Aura of Sacrifice. And then Aura of Mercy is just kind of like passively healing all the time, and then when you pop it, it gives you a bunch of raid heals. This would be like if there's a certain fight that like there's a lot of damage that comes out at a particular point, but it's not like burst damage. It just like kind of slowly takes the raid down. This would probably be nice to have. Aura Mastery is really good for like burst healing. Like, oh my god, 8 seconds, like the raid just dropped to like everybody's at 10%. You need to top everybody off. Aura Sacrifice is like unbeatable. So you definitely want to do that. So that's a huge cooldown. It's on 3 minutes. Definitely pop these separately. I find way too many people popping all their cooldowns at the same time. Like they'll be like, oh no, I need to pop this, I need to pop Aura Mastery, and then I need to do this. Okay, literally I just wasted all my cooldowns. Look at all that. Look at all these buffs I have. Like I'm Holy Shocking for like 4 million, and like it just doesn't even make sense. You don't even need this amount of healing. You just don't usually. I mean, I can't even think of a time. I guess the only time I think I've ever popped that much is like on a bursting week when there was like 10 or 15 or whatever stacks. Like people were literally dying. Like I was at like 4 or 5 million HPS or something like that. So very rarely are you going to pop all your cooldowns at the same time. You need to stagger them, and now you know how to use them, hopefully. In terms of potion, you can use potion of prolonged power. I use that right before every fight. I use a potion of prolonged power real quick, and that's called a pre-pot. And then you can use ancient mana potion when you are getting low on mana. If you have time, you need to use Lay Torrent though, because you're going to get more. So you need to communicate with your other healers, and if there's a downtime in a fight, you're going to use Lay Torrent for sure, because it gives you, there's like 10 seconds in a fight, which usually there is, for you to sit down and do nothing, you're going to want to use Lay Torrent. And then I think that covers most of how you're going to play, what your abilities do. Your beacon is important too, so make sure that you are monitoring who your beacon's on and what your beacon's doing based on which beacon you chose, because it is a very characteristic thing of a Holy Paladin right now, is the fact that they can heal when they're not even targeting somebody. The fact that I can heal this person and not even target this person is pretty awesome, and so it makes us really strong tank healers. And doing some interesting things with your beacons. Sometimes I'll put beacon on myself, like if I run Beacon of Faith, sometimes I'll put one of them on myself if I know I'm going to take a bunch of damage. Or sometimes, like last boss of Antorus, you can put one of your beacons on the tree when it's taking damage and heal the tree. So some interesting uses for all these abilities. But one thing I wanted to just mention real quick one more time is Rule of Law. And Rule of Law is super important when you are out of range. So making sure that the second you see people that are out of your range that need heals, you're able to pop Rule of Law. It has to be on its own cooldown. So remember, I have it on Tears Deliverance, so I can pop it right now. I'll prove it to you. Ready? So I'm going to move, and then I popped it. Boom. And then I can heal that person. So I can pop it whenever I want to. And I also have it keybound to my Aura Mastery and some other things too, but I'm definitely making use of Rule of Law. Super important. Two things: increases your range of your heals, also increases the range of your mastery. And so watch this. So I'll just I'll heal this person right here. It's 1.255 mil, and this is supposed to buff my healing, right? Here we go. And 1.285. I mean, that might not seem like a lot, but that's quite a bit over time, right? If you're not using, I mean, it's really the only thing in this that actually buffs your healing, Rule of Law. So it does buff your healing, but the majority of the reason I use it is for the range. Super nice. I don't really think any other healer has the ability to, like, on command heal like 60 yards away, like, and save somebody's life. It's really awesome. Another thing that you're gonna want to make sure that you understand is cooldown wise is your lay on hands. Make sure you're using that to save someone's life. Your Blessing of Protection protects them from physical damage. Make sure you're using that to protect them from physical damage. And then your Blessing of Sacrifice, making sure that you're using that mainly on the tanks or somebody that you know is going to be taking a whole bunch of damage. Sometimes if I didn't use Blessing of Sacrifice, the tank would have died, right? Because I know the tank is taking a ton of damage, and there's no way that my heals can heal them through that. And so to assist that, I'm just going to take 30% of his damage, and then I should be able to heal him through it. So this is just a super great cooldown, Blessing of Sacrifice. And then Blessing of Freedom does a lot more than you might think. So Blessing of Freedom actually removes a lot of buffs that otherwise would not be removed. So for example, the first boss of Court of Stars, when he binds everybody and pretty much you have to jump 3 times to get it off. Well, you can just Blessing of Freedom and GG, right? It's done. So that's super nice. And then obviously you have your Divine Shield and your Divine Protection you want to be using too. So Human Trinket you can use to get out of stuns. Example would be on Mistress in TOS when you might get stunned by a jellyfish or something. So you can use this in raiding too. A lot of times this, if you're a human, that would help you. But whatever racial you're using, make sure that you're making use of that if it's helpful to you, like Shadow Melt, or if you're a Night Elf, or whatever it is that you have for your racial. Try to make use of that the best that you can. And that's it. I would like to show you this stuff in action. So you'll see a clip of Mythic Plus, and then you'll see a clip of a raid, and then we'll wrap this up.
Ooh. I trust my healer.
Yeah. Okay. Going deep. You like that damage, baby. I know it. Bring them together. I'm gonna Aura Mastery. Glad I did. Okay, so the next one I won't have Aura Mastery. That was 20% reduced and people almost died. Crab Pack here you should probably pull for percent, because we usually do. Oh, yeah, might as well pull them both. Then we won't be lacking. I think the freedom just makes you completely immune to that, dude. Like, that's just, yeah, it's like OP. Well, let's kill this guy, the Wave Crasher, I think. Because, well, we can't let him do one of his Rising Furies while he's enraged, or we're done. So, there's the first Rising Fury, so don't let him get a second one off. What's up? Tell me if he's about to get it off. Let's see. Alright, I got it right here. I'm gonna have to Aura Mastery. Okay. Oh, the binding here? Is anybody able to get out of it? Here's, I'm gonna... Okay, I'm gonna freedom. Oh, nice. Master Spell. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna cleanse the fruit. I got you. Cleansing. Okay, go around. Here we go. Next person who gets it, I can't bop you. We're gonna have to maybe stack for it, and I'll pop Aura Mastery. You ready? Okay, stack, and then we'll pop Aura Mastery. Okay, we got some bombs coming. Some things rolling into the tanks. You can... Okay, we detonated all the circles pretty much. Watch out, Ruiner. Ruiner. Please. Yeah, figure it out quick. Get to the ads. Purple's about to be. Yep, good. I'm topping off the raid. We got a ruiner. I'm gonna blow up this real quick. Watch out. I'm gonna blow up one more. I can't blow up that one. Oh no. Gino, what happened? Okay. Let's get Gino up. I'm gonna blow this one up. Tay's got 2 stacks. I'm gonna blow this. I'm gonna blow just that one up. Watch out. I just blew one of them up. There's another one Trinky got. Okay, we're good. Get back to our... Okay, good. I think all the orbs are gone. Yep. We got this. We're lacking DPS most likely on... Actually, looks like we're doing beast mode. Good job, because you had to make up for genocide being dead. Purple's gonna be dead too. Yeah, nothing's up. We need maybe a trank here, potentially. We'll see. Because I don't have really much. I have wings here in a second, but... Ruiner. It's... Okay, yeah, we got super lucky. Go, go. Okay, orbs are spawning. I'm gonna detonate one right away. I'm gonna detonate another one. Watch out. Okay, soak, 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 quick. Georgie and Soon, I think, got hit by the boss. Careful. Ruiner, Ruiner, watch out. I'm gonna detonate a ball. Watch out. Okay. Alright. Don't detonate anymore. Okay, I'm gonna detonate one. Okay. Okay, mine's detonated. We're good. For this one, we're gonna hero. I'm gonna detonate one. Oh, 57 seconds. Just tank him. Okay, Ruiner. I'm gonna detonate another one. Watch out. Don't detonate that one yet. Okay, Trinky can get it. Yeah. Nice. Okay, ads. Get ready to go deep with hero. Watch out for orbs. Watch out. You can get that one, Trink. Yeah. Okay. Deep. We're about to get hit here. I got us. That's alright, I got it. I got cooldowns up. We need to in 15, yeah. 15 seconds we can get him up. We got our side down too. Go, go, go. Come on. Massive heals on Tay, and we got him up in 2, 1. Come on, get him up. Yeah, get those out. Ruiner, get out, get out. I'm gonna detonate a purple swirly here in a second. I'm detonate one right. I just already when it went off. I'm gonna get this one, or mold, watch out. I just got one. Yeah, please. You got 2 stacks now. It's alright, we got it. I'm gonna get one. Ruiner, Ruiner! Focus. Okay, I'm taking another one. Okay, take that last one, one of the tanks to get that last one. I got it. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna detonate. Okay, keep going, guys. We're still gonna have one more set of adds. Ruiner, and then one more set of adds. I'm gonna detonate. Don't detonate anymore. I got one. I get one. Okay. I'm gonna get the last one detonated. Watch out. Okay, I'm detonating. Okay, last set of adds. Go deep. Pop second potion if you can. Like your second prolonged power if you have it up. Go, go, go. Oh, you do? Okay, go deep. Oh, nice. We'll go deep. Come on, guys. Also, unfortunately, it's not going to be on Master Loot because I never put it to Master. So sorry, guys. Good job. Alright, so thank you for watching. If there is anything that I did not mention that you think would be a good, helpful thing that I should have included, then please let me know. And I want this to be as beneficial as possible. And so if you have any tips and tricks that you can think of that I did not mention, please share. We're trying to get as good as we can here with the Holy Paladin community. And I will also have some videos coming out maybe for Ret and Prot as well. But I figured I'd start off with Holy, and then this video I can refer back to as a comprehensive guide for the Holy Paladin. So thanks for watching.